are watching Simon Says on Mtgo Academy featuring Simon Görtzen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Simon Goertzen and you're watching Simon Says. I'm absolutely thrilled to bring you the very first Cons of Tarkir episode, and I'm kind of sorry that I couldn't prepare one earlier. I actually submitted my PhD thesis today, so I'm actually happy to be here at all, to be honest. Yeah, that said, I don't have as much experience with Cans of Tarkir as a lot of you will already have, and certainly not as much as the people on the Pro Tour did that culminated last weekend. Congratulations to Arilax drafting 4 or 5 color strategies in Cans of Tarkir, already deviating from the wedge model of there is a clan for each 3 color combination of enemy colored wedges, as they are called. Then the Pro Tour also showed that there are people that really want to be 2 color if at all possible. It's kind of preferable to start off enemy colored in an enemy colored pair, because that leaves you the option of 2 clans to take cards from. And but I've also seen a very successful allied color 2-color decks, and of course the 2-color decks are the more aggressive decks of the format. They compensate for the lack of powerful gold cards by just having a more consistent mana base, and the drafters don't need to spend picks picking mana fixing, and clearly mana fixing is one of the key aspects of this format. A brilliant idea by Wizards of the Coast to combine Morph with this wedge set, with this multicolor set, because Morphs naturally lend themselves to making tougher mana bases work. You can always do something, which is often enough in limited. So for me, this is going to be an exploration of the format as always. I'm also relying on your comments and feedback. What have you found out? Where do you think people are making mistakes? Where are edges to be exploited? These are the questions that I always want to hear. And for Cons of Tarkir, of course, they are a bit more specific. Do you go for the 5 color strategies? Do you go for a clan, but do you prioritize fixing sufficiently high? Do you go for 2 colors with a splash? Do you go for a 2-color aggro, no splashes at all? So this is, I think, is the key to the format. And then the other question is, which identity do you want each clan to have? Which identity do you want your archetypical decks to have? Do you already know that one clan, for example, is always going to be token aggro? One of them is going to be some kind of tempo mid-range deck. And then you have maybe the control deck of the format. And it might be Abzan, it might be something else. These are the questions that guide me. I will be exploring them in a little more detail in upcoming discussion videos. I'm also going to look at the draft viewer of the Pro Tour, always 2 drafts being covered, and sometimes there's some nice things to take away from that. But most importantly, I'm going to be drafting Cans of Tarkir and a lot of that. So I'm happy to be here, happy to be back. Enjoy the show, everyone. Simon Görtzen, Simon Says.
If you'd like to exchange your Magic Online cards for event tickets while logged in on Magic Online, you can do so by trading Mtgo Academy's official bot, Academy Buy Bot. You can find it in the Magic Online trading area or add it to your buddy list.
Alright everyone, it's time for my very first Cons of Tarkir draft for mtgoacademy.com. And of course I will not have enough time to talk about everything here. Altar of the Brood is thankfully not a card I'm going to pick. Mardu Rough Rider is powerful, but of course 3 colored. Then there's 2 of the 1 mana Outlast creatures. Both of them are pretty good. I don't think that Death Touch and Growing creatures work too well together, but Trample and Outlast is a pretty nice combination. Abzan Guide, some of the fine commons. There's a Windscarred Crag, Tusked Colossodon. Yeah, the commons don't look too amazing here. I think it's between the 3 uncommons, with the Rough Rider being probably the best creature if mana wasn't a consideration, but I think that Tuskguard Captain has the most potential. Basically, the Captain and the Nightblade are the same power, except that I think that Trample works a bit better with Outlast, and it's just 1 mana cheaper, which makes a big difference. So here the rare is missing, it looks like. And yeah, Venerable Lamb is a pretty expensive card. I think it's still fine, but 7 mana is just a lot. This is a very efficient spell. I'm not sure if it's the right follow-up after the Captain. The big question, of course, in this format is how do you decide on a color and how do you actually position yourself. So the good mana fixer in this pack is Thornwood Falls, which is good for Timur or Sultai. Would also work with the Captain here, so I could actually take that. Monastery Flock is fine. Rite of the Serpent is fine. I think these cards are all alright, but none of them really excites me. I think that even Winterflame isn't super good, so I'm going to take Thornwood Falls here. It's one of the enemy color duels, so it works with 2 of the clans, and I even have a green card already, so that just makes me want to take it. This is a fun Morph Pinewalker, makes for some tricky decisions on your opponent's part. Jeskai Charm is, well, I'm actually not the biggest fan. I don't really like the burn aspect, the second mode. The first mode can be great, can also be sometimes pretty bad if you're behind. So I'm not the biggest fan of Jeskai Charm, to be honest. I don't know what this does. Oh yeah, I don't know, it looks a bit clunky to me. There is a Barrage of Boulders, but that's only 1 damage. Killshot is the better removal spell, if I'm looking for that. I'm kind of hesitant to pick a white card after picking the Captain here. I also think that once again, Windscarred Crag might be the best card here, just to stay open and maybe even go for a 5-color strategy. Until I'm getting stronger signals than this kind of charm, I think I'm going to go with mana fixing here. And there's another land, so at least we have that option. The people to my right are picking rares and uncommons, it seems. So the only uncommon left is Mistfire Weaver. I've played with this guy a little bit, and I'm not a big fan of morphs that have a low toughness when you unmorph them, because it's almost impossible to get into a positive combat with them. Although it's a super efficient creature, don't get me wrong. So Defiant Strike I like in Prowess decks. Disdainful Stroke is okay, but it kind of sucks against morphs, of course. Longshot Squad is actually kind of nice. I think that could be a solid pickup after the Captain here. And the real alternative is Rugged Highlands, because I think that Treasure Cruise is not that great in draft. I'm going to go with another Outlast creature here. I don't think that I'm all in on 5-color or anything, so I'd rather cut this card from my neighbors, because even if I go into a multicolored themed deck, I want to have at least one of my colors set up, and it looks to be green from the cards I've been passed. And there is another Tuskguard Captain, which I picked quite highly, and it looks like people are valuing lower than me. Actually, an Enoch Bondkin as well. Quite the solid creature as well. So yeah, once again, I think the best cards here are the Ramparts, the Captain, and the Swiftwater Cliffs. It definitely appears that mana fixing is open, so to my immediate right, nobody seems to be forcing a 5-color deck or anything of that sorts. And now we can really see if we might just draft a nice Outlast deck here. Doesn't even have to be such a multicolored deck, highly multicolored deck. I don't like Swift Spear in limited, well, except for maybe in a very few decks. Dazzling Ramparts I've already talked about, I think is pretty good card. Like I said, I'm not too keen on going white-green right off the bat, but I might end up in Abzan anyway, so might as well pick up the Ramparts, I guess. Yeah, I don't like Dreadmaw. I'm gonna go with Jungle Hollow here. I'm not sure what the pick is between Hollow and Ramparts. It's possible that Ramparts should be the pick, but I'll just stick to picking Mana Fixing in this first pack. Mana Fixing and green cards, and then I can pretty much decide what I want to play. Blossoming Sands would continue this theme, and the alternative is to go for one of the common morphs here. This one is very, very powerful, but it's also the toughest to cast for me, with having 3 green cards and this one being Mardu colored. I'm not too keen on a 5/5 trample, which is still fine, but I like the Ponyback Brigade a lot better. That said, I'm just going to take Blossoming Sands here, mostly because I find it so hard to decide. There's also some more Outlast creatures in white. Like I said, it's definitely possible that I should have just gone for that. So here, there is actually Rite of the Serpent still in the pack. I might be overvaluing it because it is a bit clunky. Awaken the Bear is also a fine card. I'm going to take the removal spell here, though. Alright, Fatty. I don't like the banners at all, so I'm not gonna take any of these. Cancel, Erase. I'm not sure if that's really what I want to be doing. I kind of like Mardu Warshrieker for its potential to, well, not ramp you, but basically you get a cheap 4 mana 3/3, and 3/3s are pretty good in a morph format. I'm still gonna go with a green creature just to cut green. Because that's the only card the only color I've been really been able to cut here. I'm not sure that if Swift Kick is amazing. Lifelink Morph looks kind of out of place as well. I'm not sure if that's something that I want. I think the most powerful card here is actually the Lamassu, so I'm going to take that, and I might actually play that depending on how my deck ends up. Segu Archer is fine. Yeah, none of these are really interesting. Let's take the green card. A banner or a Defiant Strike. Rotting Mastodon is not really needed in this Outlast deck, so Defiant Strike it is. Alright, lots of green cards, 1 black card, 2 white cards, and a bit of mana fixing, but nothing definite yet. Alright, time for pack 2. I see a Bloodstained Mire. I'm actually not sure how much that is worth, but it's definitely not the best pick for this deck here. That's pretty much for certain. Not a Trumpet Blast deck, that's easy to see. I don't think that I should be picking up more fixing in other colors, as long as I don't have any idea where things are going. I see another Rite of the Serpent. I see a couple of good blue cards. This is expensive, but 4/5 Flying Prowess is also quite the threat. Monastery Flock is good. I like Suspension Field, even though it is limited in its application. And I also really like Alabaster Kirin. I think that's just a card that fits very well into what you want to be doing in this format. So between the Aerialist, Suspension Field, and Alabaster Kirin, I'm not quite sure which card I like best. I'm gonna think that Suspension Field is a little bit better than the Kirin. Could be wrong because of the toughness 3 or greater, but I mean that still gets pretty much all the dangerous cards in the format, or once they've grown. Alright, this is interesting. It looks like it's flying, but it's not flying, so it makes it a bit worse. Kind of a utility creature only. This is Sorcery Speed Lure, and I'm not so sure if that's something that I want. I like the Bondkin here because I could really use more Outlast creatures, and everything else is really not all that exciting. It looks like I might be going into white-green, as weird as that sounds, but I guess 2-color decks are certainly playable, and then it doesn't really matter if you're drafting enemy-colored or allied-colored deck. Alright, so this is an interesting decision. I don't like clunky morphs like War Behemoth, and I do like a lot of the tricks in the format. Feet of Resistance, Crippling Chill, Awaken the Bear are all pretty nice. I also like Absent Guide because 4/4 lifelink is just a really big deal. So the Absent Guide would mean that I want to pair my white and green with black, which is the only clan that I have available. And alternatively, I could just pick Feet of Resistance or Awaken the Bear if I wanted to build a solid 2-color deck instead. And I have a Blossoming Sands, which is always going to be good. I also have a single Jungle Hollow to support the black, but probably not the Rite of the Serpent here. So the real question is how good these tricks are going to be. And I think I'm going to go with Abzan Guide here, because it just doesn't seem like a format where you want too many tricks. But having this Abzan Guide, maybe even with a couple of ways to generate black mana, could make my late game very good with pretty little efforts. Alright, Mystic Monastery is not for me. That much is clear. I'm also pretty much giving up on my hopes of going 5-color because, well, so far nothing has really manifested in that direction. I'm not going to pick Kruma Bondkin because playing this as an off-color morph or splash morph, well, it's not warranted from its power level. Not like the Abzan Guide I picked or the Weapon Master. I'm going to go with Defiant Strike here. I just think that Alpine Grizzly is very replaceable, and it trades unfavorably with morphs. So I want to pick up some of the combo tricks that are available here. Alright, some red cards, not really for me. This is actually the better version of the Tusked Colossodon. Just morphing into a 6/7 is pretty huge. I also like Hooting Mandrills, 4/4 trample, but you kind of have to have support for it, and my deck doesn't really put all that many cards into the graveyard. So I'm going to go with the Loxodon instead, which I actually think is quite good. So from what I know is, like, once you start putting the morphs in the 3-drop slot, it messes up the sorting, but I'm going to do it anyway to have a better idea of my curve. I like Blossoming Sands here just to be sure that my mana is going to be good. I would prefer a Jungle Hollow, but I think it's still the best card, and I don't need the Hooting Mandrills or Sage Eye Harrier all that much. Pretty Late Trumpet Blast once again. Oh yeah, that doesn't work. So this is another Venerable Lamassu. I'm not sure if I want another 7-drop though. And then the alternatives for me are pretty much Heart Piercer Bow, which I don't think fits into this format very well, or the Sage Eye Harrier, which is always going to be solid, I think. And I guess that's also going to be the pick. I would love to pick up a 2-drop here, but that just doesn't seem to be possible. It's actually possible that the Lamassu is better than the Harrier. I mean, 5 mana and a morph cost of 4 is really, really clunky. Yeah, let's just take another Lamassu. Who knows? We might actually want a couple of banners at this point. Another Abzan Guide looks great. It's not a 2-drop, but otherwise it's the perfect fit. And I have the 2 Defiant Strikes, so I don't need Feet of Resistance or Seiju Archer. Yeah, now my sorting is messed up. And I could hate draft a Monastery Flock here, or just take another Rite of the Serpent. I'm not gonna play Raksha's Secret. Yeah, let's just take that unconditional removal, even if it's very unlikely that I'm gonna have enough black sources to cast that. Alright, Mardu Banner is completely in the wrong colors, so I can just take Roar of Challenge here. And as usual in this format, you get a couple of fillers anyway, so I don't really have to worry about that. Wow, Trample Blast and Treasure Cruise. I'm just gonna hate draft the Trumpet Blast. I don't really want to play against that. And yeah, why not? Let's just take this for the sideboard. My curve does not look as bad as Magic Online suggests. The lack of 2-drops is something that I've talked about. I have the Bondkin, but that's it. But starting turn 3, I have a lot of stuff to do. And my late game isn't too bad because I have the 2 captains and Longshot Squad. I have 4 Outlast creatures already. So here I see a Chief of the Scale, which would require more black sources than I currently have. I see Mardu Horde Chief, which I like quite a bit. I see another Blossoming Sands, which helps me fix my natural colors, but doesn't help me turn up Abzan guides, which is kind of a bummer. I could also, for my curve, just take a smoke teller, but that just doesn't seem worth it because I can't even activate the activated ability. So I think it can't be Blossoming Sands, because even a black 2-drop or a Mardu Horde Chief seem better at this point. I would take a black white or another black green land though, because that actually allows me to reduce on the number of black sources I ultimately play. So I'm gonna take the Horde Chief here. Oh, actually, I'm torn. I think the Chief of the Scale is going to be better in my deck if my mana works out better. But if my mana doesn't work out as I want it to, then this is actually going to be much worse. So yeah, it's possible that I made a mistake there. Couldn't quite decide. And now I do not really have enough fixing to warrant moving into another color, for example, for this Ponyback Brigade. But at least this pack has a couple of nice cards for me. Become Immense is nice. Watcher of the Roost is definitely not bad. Basically a 2-1 flyer and you get a little bit of a bonus. I think that I'm going to take the Watcher because Jeskai Student is not sufficiently better, even though it would be better on my curve. I like the evasion of the Watcher, so I'm going to take that. Alright, some pretty sweet cards here. Avalanche Tusker, I'm not going to be able to support. And Mardu Rough Rider, I would need more red sources for. And I already checked with my sideboard, and I basically only have Windscard Crack. So yeah, that just isn't happening. Now, this pack also doesn't have fixing for me. There's a Windscard Crack, but that doesn't do it. I could play Seek the Horizon, but that's not really something I'm looking forward to. I don't really want to play these kind of clunky cards to fix my mana if at all possible. I think my best course of action here is to actually take the Mardu Rough Rider, because it's from the 3 gold cards, from the rare and the 2 uncommons, it's the card that I'm most likely able to play, and I feel better taking out a strong card out of this pack rather than picking something unexciting for myself. Alright, Chief of the Edge as well. Abzan Battle Priest also very powerful, because Lifelink and Outlast is just also a very good combination. Also Longshot Squad. I think it just has to be Battle Priest here. It is a bit slow to get going, but it makes up for the slowness with its ability. Once again, if I had the black support, I would take Chief of the Edge as well to make my curve a lot better. This is also a warrior, so that would actually be great, but I don't think my deck can support it. The amount of fixing has gone down significantly as well compared to pack 1. So here there's a Mardu Charm, which goes in a similar direction as the Rough Rider. I would need red and black support to utilize that, which I currently don't think is happening. I might just take a Become Immense here, even if it's not a super exciting card. It would definitely be possible to play this as your single Delve card in your deck. Yeah, I don't think that I need another Seiju Archer. And Awaken the Bear, Abzan Banner, but also a Throttle. So this, I think, is a clear Throttle. It's a clunky removal spell, but it is a removal spell, and I have a bunch of combat tricks already. And this is a card that's actually worth splashing for. So the real question is if I ever want to play an Abzan Banner in a deck like this, allowing me to cast to turn out around Abzan Guide to maybe cast a Venerable Lamassu. Quite interesting. A Mind Swipe and a Burn Waste on the pack, and of course picking Abzan Banner is not where I where I want to be if I had the choice. But I think in this deck, I could actually be quite happy about having a banner in the end. And none of the other cards excite me. And I think that hate drafting is just not generally going to be a good idea. I like Bitter Revelation here. And if my curve was better, it would be even nicer. But that's still a card that I think could be good here. The problem is, of course, that it's once again on the splash. But I'm not thrilled about taking another banner. So I'm just going to take the Black Divination and see what happens. Alright, hate drafting the Weapon Master or picking an Erase maybe for the sideboard. Yeah, I'm just going to take out the Weapon Master. It's tough enough to play against morphs. You don't also have to pass the best of them. I think that Channeling Attendance is not bad, but in a deck with that much Outlast, I'm not worried about my late game too much. So I'd rather have another cheap creature that I can always play if I have 3 mana. Warden of the Eye is wheeling, so let's just take that. And I guess we fade. No, I guess Erase for the sideboard is the best pick for me. Yeah, quite interesting. Not sure if I can be happy about how this went, but I have a throttle, so now I don't feel too bad about playing black. I have the 2 Abzan Guides, so I can actually make use of the black mana once I have it. And I kind of like how these cards work together. The Outlast creatures just become pretty big, pretty fast, and then the lifelink kind of puts me back into the game. I also like the Become Immense with the 2 Abzan Guides. That should be fun. All right, and an island to close it out. All right, time for deck building, and I already know that I'm not going to play the Rite of the Serpents. That is just not something that my mana is going to support. I also don't think that Tusked Colossodon is going to make it, because I have more than enough cards for that. Now, the problem that I see is that if I don't add any of these cards, I actually don't have too many playables. And I mean, Rotting Mastodon is not really too exciting on the splash. So if we look at it like this and put the cheaper morph creatures into the 3-drop slot, then my curve looks kind of nice, except for the fact that I have 2 7-drops. And this is 23 cards, but still with 2 Abzan banners. Now, it's actually possible that my deck should run these 2, because my mana curve is actually very high, and the amount of fixing that I have does not make me super happy. And I mean, playing this Pat here is also not great on the splash. I'm just not really going to be able to support the double black of the Rite of the Serpent. It's actually possible that Rotting Mastodon would fill a vital spot in the curve while being a solid blocker. I mean, a 2/8 is not is pretty much a roadblock on the ground. I also don't hate a Tusked Colossodon in this kind of build. I just don't think it's necessary, because on 6 mana I can just play other creatures that I can also morph, which the Tusked Colossodon doesn't allow. So if I move it around like this, I could play 17 lands and the 2 banners, just to make sure that I don't only have enough mana, but I also have the right colors of mana. And I think that's what I'm going to go for. And then my deck is pretty much done. I have 3 black cards, but also the 2 Abzan Guides. So I should probably have at least 3 black land sources in addition to the 2 banners. Oh no, I even have the Chief of the Scale. So 3 or 4 land sources in black is kind of a necessity here. And that is also because I'm playing the Rotting Mastodon. I just don't think that the Pat has a high enough impact to really be worth it. So I really didn't want to play any banners, but now I am. Not a good sign. Let's see. This one is pretty much all colors. I actually have a lot less green than white, but I don't know if that's going to be super important. I also need a green for 3 out of 6 Outlast abilities, so it's definitely not an unimportant color. White, a little more important. So if I play only 17 lands and the 2 banners, which I think is fine because of the lack of fixing, especially the lack of black fixing, then I'm going to have, just counting the lands, 17 plus 3, 20 sources. And I already said that I want 3 or 4 black sources, land-based black sources. Now, that would give me 4, which I think is fine. Having 3 swamps is actually pushing it because I might be stuck with a hand that has too many swamps. And then I have 3 green sources and 2 white sources already. Now, that means I could add 6 white and 5 green. But then I actually have 8, sorry. Then I have 8 green sources and 8 white sources. So the amount of white and green sources in this build would be exactly the same. Now I could see cutting a green source, but I'm not sure if what I would want to add, because ultimately I want to draw all of my colors, and the more I stray away from an even distribution, the more likely am I to be stuck on only white sources, for example. And to be honest, I have 8 white sources here plus the 2 banners, so it's not like I'm undervaluing my white cards. I think I have a little too many green sources. I think this deck doesn't necessarily need 8 green sources with the 3 early creatures that only require green, and everything else is fine without. And I'm actually thinking that another black source might be the answer, but I'm just really scared about drawing 2 swamps in my opening hand that I can never really make use of. Ultimately, I think that this is probably the best setup, and I'm gonna leave it like this, see how it works out during the games. It's possible that we only draw 2 lands and the banner, and that it's going to be horrible, but I think that this deck has sufficient power level, but the mana is just really not great. And I want to make sure that that works out. All right, let's see if that works out as planned.
Do you love to play Magic Online but have a tight budget? Check out Mtgo Academy's Academy Budget Bot in the Magic Online Classifieds. All cards in stock are cheaper than 1 event ticket.
Time for round 1. And actually an interesting decision if you want to play first in this kind of format. It's not super fast, but there are, of course, the aggro decks. And I think with the Outlast creatures and the banners, I want to be on the play. My deck is a bit too slow to be on the draw as well. This actually looks nice, but yeah, you can see why I want to be on the play with the deck like this. If you're on the draw, it's possible that you're just not doing anything until your opponent does some very powerful things. I do have a nice turn 6 and 7 coming up, if it ever comes to that. So let's hope that my opponent is not super fast here. I kind of like the Defiant Strike as well. That should be a card that I can use pretty early on. Windswept Heath, alright. And clearly, well, I'm not drawing 2 drops. I don't have any in my deck, so it's actually not the end of the world to just play the banner or a morph here. Yeah, if my opponent is not doing anything, I'm just happy to play the banner to develop my mana. Absent Guide might actually change that, because that's a morph that I really want to have in play. It's kind of a great card to unmorph, and with the Absent banner next turn, I can play the banner and still have the Defiant Strike up. I am telegraphing that a little bit if I play the banner before combat, but there isn't much my opponent is going to be able to do about it. Looks like Sultai. Oh, Abs and Banner, so maybe even a 5-color deck as well. Drawing a land here would be nice. Jungle Hollow, alright, I'll take it. So at least I'm not the only one that's playing banners. Don't know if that's a good or a bad sign, but I still have the Loxodon to play next turn. I also have the Unmorph of Abzan, which I might just do. And then my late game is actually looking quite nice with these heavy hitters. Seiju Archer. Now, Unmorphing is actually not that great, except if I draw land, then the Defiant Strike is pretty great again. Yeah, I'm not gonna cycle a Defiant Strike. I think that card is too powerful not to wait on it. Don't really think that my opponent can block here. Oh, looks like he can. Alright, white, black, green. 4/4 and 5/4. Not getting ahead in the damage race on my opponent's life total, but at least I'm up to 27. And I traded Defiant Strike for Seiju Archer, drawing a card in the process. So now I actually have 7 next turn. Can potentially just play the Loxodon for maximum beatdown efficiency. Alright, that's kind of annoying. Pretty good against my deck also. Blossoming Sands, actually a card that I don't want to play here. It's possible that if I play the Woolly Loxodon, that my opponent taps out for something, and then the Ramparts blocks the Loxodon, which would be kind of good for me. But I also want to play both of my 7 drops in the upcoming turn, so I'm not really too interested in casting Defiant Strike anyway, and that means I'm just gonna go for the evasive creature. And if my opponent spends the 2 mana to tap it, I think there shouldn't be anything too scary coming down on my opponent's side. Looks like a Delph card. This can't be I sacrifice 2 creatures yet. Oh yeah, it's Murderous Cut. Alright. That's a powerful one. Jeskai Student, not so much. Interesting, my opponent cast the Student rather than tapping the Guide. I guess tapping it is not all that relevant. I gain more life in the process, but it's not. Oh, this costs 2. Yeah, okay. It feels pretty good to have all that mana here. And I'm also just going to cast this face up. I don't think there's a need to hide the fact that this is a huge morph. And I kind of want to sacrifice Absent Banner next turn. Yeah, Murderous Cut is a super good uncommon in this format. You can just basically hold up a single black when the game goes longer and kill any creature. Alright, I was gonna say if I draw a land, I'm cracking the banner immediately, but here I think I can attack first. I also don't care for the fact that I can unmorph the Watcher. I mean, I don't want to reveal Defiant Strike if I don't have to. The long shot squad is a problem long term anyway, so... Oh, no, not anymore. Okay, opponent realized that this is not a good block. So I'm still gonna sacrifice this first. I still have the mana to cast Watcher of the Roost, and if I draw something better, then I can still play something better. And I think Tuskheart Captain is actually better. Yeah, getting an Outlast creature of my own, I think, is a bit more valuable than getting the Watcher of the Roost in play. And I'm gonna hold the Swarm just in case my opponent has any plans of making me discard. Looks like Outlast is getting activated. Have to be a bit careful that my opponent doesn't play the +2/+2 and untap on his guy. But I guess that wouldn't even kill the Loxodon, and my opponent would be telegraphing it. So yeah, so my opponent made the long shot squad a 4/4. And that means it's going to turn into a 6/6 before it fights my Outlast creature, which is of course enough to kill it. I think that Jeskai Student could probably have attacked here. So, well, maybe the student is chump blocking. No. So here, I'm now just gonna play this face up because I don't want to reveal the Defiant Strike. And if that entices my opponent to keep Longshot Squad untapped, I'm fine with it. I can still attack into the squad as long as it's a 4/4, because I'm fine trading the squad for Absent Guide. So I'm not unhappy if that stops the Outlast activations. A morph on my opponent's side. Yeah, and no Outlast. Throttle. Wow, that's huge. That's a huge draw. Holding up a blue. I'm just gonna see what happens if I throttle this. This could actually be the 0/5, now that my opponent is holding up a single blue, but it's still great to kill Longshot Squad here, and I even have the Defiant Strike if it's I think it's called Flock, something Flock. If it's the Flock, it's probably blocking Absent Guide anyway, so I am going to put at least one counter on the captain here. It's not getting through Jeskai Student anyway. Yeah, if this is the 0/5, I'm just snapping off the Defiant Strike. What's it called? Monastery Flock. Alright. Was a good plan by my opponent. Sorry it didn't work out. I suppose I could have played a land here. Don't think it makes a big difference. I'm losing horribly to cards like Dune Blast. But other than mass removal, I have a pretty dominant board position here. Okay, opponent tried to cast something and then decided to concede. Yeah, I was close to drawing too many lands, but I had exactly enough gas to keep going. And the absent banner that I drew was actually quite valuable. I guess it just really works in my deck. Could have even cast these, and they wouldn't have been bad. But I think that's a bit too optimistic. I actually drew all three of my fixers. This is a 6/7, so it doesn't even get through the ramparts. It's possible that I should still bring in one of these to have a bit more staying power in the late game. My overall game plan against this deck is just quite simple. I want to have fat creatures and get through with them. So Rotting Mastodon might be worse than a Tusked Colossodon, for example. I think that's a change I can definitely make. I don't think that I want Roar of Challenge. Yeah, I don't like the effect. It just doesn't seem worth it. Let's try it like this. I mean, my opponent knows about the Divine Strikes now, but it's not always easy to play around them. I'm on the draw and I have the dreaded 2 Swamp Hand, but I have an Abzan banner and 2 colorless cards, 2 additional colorless cards. So all this hand needs is a single land by turn 3. An arbitrary land till turn 2 and an untapped land on turn 3. And that looks like it's working out. I believe it was correct to go for the Lamassus and the Abzan banner build. Even if I wasn't a big fan of the idea, this gives me tremendous late game, and evasion is just very, very potent in this format, as is mana fixing. 2 plains and an opulent palace. That's how you do it. A morph, alright. So Chief of the Scale is a bit awkward here. It is a 2/3, but it doesn't fit into my mana curve at all. If I could cast Abzan Banner and the Chief, it would be different. But I think I'm best off just playing the Archer face down and then hoping to draw a land to cast Abzan Banner and the Chief. I could also play the Banner now. I wouldn't be able to use the mana then. But then I guess it's still better, because if I draw a land, I will have 5 mana, for example, for Captain plus Chief. But if I don't, then I also can play the Captain, or yeah, which is probably better in the long run. I mean, it's not like the morph is going to kill me anytime soon. This also allows me to draw into Defiant Strike, or at least represent Defiant Strike. And then my opponent has to decide if he wants to respect that. A second morph, alright. And I draw a second captain. Yeah, that's not really the draw I wanted to see. But I guess this is the position where you just represent Defiant Strike and see what your opponent has. The problem is that blocking against 5 mana here is very dangerous. if I'm blocking if my opponent is attacking and I'm blocking an Abzan guide, I'm just pretty much dead. Huh. Alright, both of them are attacking, and it's actually interesting that this one attacked first, and then it looked like my opponent was thinking about attacking with this one. I mean, there has to be a trick of some sorts, and it could just be that it's a huge morph. My feeling is that my hand kind of wants my opponent to show his tricks, because I'm not going to lose because I've lost a card. I'm going to lose because I can't deploy my cards quickly enough. And I think that this waiting, like this 1 second delay, was probably a bluff. So I'm going to actually block the second morph. Alright, block the 4/5. And my guy's dead. It's a land. It's not the land that I wanted, but it's a land. So that gains me a life. And I'm 1 land away from just hard casting this, which is pretty horrible against a 4/5, to be honest. I could play another... Well, I can play the archer next turn, face up, and then I have a 2/5 to block with. The question is if I want to protect the Tuskguard Captain for later, because it's definitely more powerful than Chief of the Scale. The problem is if this morph keeps attacking, then Chief of the Scale is going to die as well if I block with it, which doesn't feel great. I would have been a lot more happy with an untapped land here, to be honest. Hard casting Seiju Archer or casting both of my warriors would have been a lot better. All right. I'm down to 9. My opponent has no place here, which is important. Otherwise, I would probably be dead. I'm up to 6 lands, so that's definitely a good thing. Can I afford to cast Abzan Guide here in any way? I would love to use this Become Immense, but I need more creatures to die first. So I think my best bet is to actually cast this face up, despite me drawing the land here. Getting a 2/5 against my opponent's Glacial Stalker, it means that I'm not really taking too much damage here next turn. And if my opponent has a removal spell, then any creature I would have played would have died, so that's not really an issue. Jungle Hollow could also be a good sign that not much else is coming. Alright. I'm gonna block. I don't think I have a choice here. I might want to morph this Abzan Guide to have a little bit of a surprise. Tap enchanted creature, it doesn't untap, and I can untap it for 6 mana. Interesting. It's actually not the most powerful follow-up from my opponent. Given that this is my best blocker, I could actually just pay the 6. Drawing a Defiant Strike here is interesting. It's definitely a card I want to have later on. But here I'm going to pass the turn. I'm not dying to my opponent's attack, even if the morph is something big. And I'm basically generating value here by passing. Yeah, now the morph is attacking. So my guess is that the morph is something huge that's going to unmorph for 6 now. Something of that sorts. And that means I'm going to block the Glacial Stalker, if I'm allowed to. Alright. Taking 2. I mean, this morph could also be... Could also just be Monastery Flock, who knows? If that's the case, then my opponent's delayed decision to attack with the second morph was actually not a bluff, but yeah, an actual thought process. Treasure Cruise for 3 cards, can't do anything about that, but at least it's not any additional pressure, so I'm actually happy about that. And now I think I have to get Abzan Guide into play. I mean, Venerable Lamassu is also quite potent, but I would feel a lot better with the lifelink from Abzan Guide. Well, if the Glacial Stalker just stays back, then Abzan Guide is actually not doing anything. And I'm not a fan of using the Divine Strike in, well, when my opponent might have a lot of mana untapped. So I have a lot of options here. I can just play the Lamassu, which could be the most powerful play I have available. And then the Abzan Guide is still going to be good next turn. I'm not dying from 7 life with this board. And I think the alternative is to play Tuskguard Captain and a morphed Abzan Guide, so that I still have the threat of the guide, but also develop my board. I think just hardcasting Abzan Guide is not powerful enough here. Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Lamassu. I have a feeling that my own opponent has the 05 here, and if it's really Monastery Flock, then getting a 5 power creature onto the battlefield is quite valuable. What an interesting deck. My opponent has a single Opulent Palace, a single blue source, and most cards have been blue. Don't know what this attack is going to accomplish, but I'm definitely not trading with my Lamassu. Throttle, alright. And something else. My opponent definitely has a Delph card in hand. Another Defiant Strike is probably not great. I think that my Archer is probably going to survive, and that means I just have to play these 2 face down. If I reveal the Abzan Guide to my opponent is just going to kill it because he knows that it's kind of my best bet. But if I play a morph, then the Tuskguard Captain might actually look more threatening. I mean, not all morphs in this format are equally scary. I need a few things to go right here. I need my opponent not to have too much, and I need to survive this attack and hopefully connect with my Abzan Guide, which is also kind of difficult, but at least I have a lot of combat tricks. Okay, might be no attack. Okay. Don't really know what my opponent is doing there. I mean, this attack, I've blocked the same every single time, and I'm fine if my opponent spends another removal spell on the Archer. And if this is the exchange that my opponent does, I'm actually being very happy that the Stalker is tapped and not on the battlefield. Well, not untapped anymore. Okay, I think I need a new plan. This Colossadon is very, very good. So I think I need to use this on defense and try to Divine Strike it. And then if my opponent has a removal spell, I'm just losing my guy. And I know that my opponent has... I know that my opponent has another Delph card in hand, which is the problem here. I'm paying 5 for this. And then I have 2 mana left. What I could do would be to Divine Strike something else first. And maybe my opponent is greedy and wants to deny me the card draw. That would be an option. Or I block the Colossus with the Archer and try to become immense. Something like that. I don't think I can attack here and play my combo trick into my opponent's cards. If it's not Murderous Cut, I'm going to be in a good position anyway, but I need to make sure that my opponent doesn't have any more good removal. Okay, yeah, this is kind of the attack that I expected. And let's see, this costs 6. So if the Archer blocks the Colossadon, I'm just going to try to become immense it, and I might lose it to a removal spell. But the become immense still costs 3, so I'm not unmorphing this in the same turn. I'm also still then taking the damage from the Glacial Stalker, which I can't even kill with the 2 other creatures, which is kind of unfortunate. I could spend a Divine Strike on that block as well, but I can't really lose the Abzan Guide. I have to go down to 4 life, I think. Even if that loses to... Oh wait, I could actually block with this Captain. Yeah, this is much better. I don't know why I didn't think of that first. This is the better block. I take 0 damage and I'm losing the Captain to a removal spell, but it's still going to be the best course of action, I think. Now, I kind of like the mana that the Abzan banner gives me. On the other hand, I have no interest in these cards in my graveyard anyway. As far as I can tell, I don't have anything to make use of them. So I can just still delve, and that gives me full options, basically. I can still decide to sacrifice this Abzan banner. Alright, if this works out, I'm actually very happy, because I don't think that my opponent would have held on to Murderous Cut if he had the chance to just kill my creature and 2-for-1 me heavily. Okay, now the Delph card. Alright, 3/5 Death Touch. And that probably means that I can sacrifice this banner. My Divine Strikes are very cheap, and I'm not so scared anymore. Suspension Field. So I could actually just exile this immediately. And then I still have a bit of mana for the Guide, which could pull me back into this game. I like the idea of exiling this. I also like the idea of just attacking with Abzan Guide and flipping it, and then first seeing what happens. And I think that might be the best course of action. I have a feeling that I might get to use Divine Strike, and that is pretty valuable here. It's not unreasonable that my opponent kind of knows that this is Abzan Guide. It is the card that makes the most sense here. Could also see a triple block, to be honest. But we don't, so... This is actually interesting. I think it might be better to Divine Strike first. And that's because if my opponent has an answer, he's going to play it, and then I save the mana from unmorphing. So I just do this first and see what happens. Alright, this just resolved very quickly, which is a good sign. Oh. I thought that this gave first strike, but it doesn't, so I messed up. That was not a good turn. I should have suspension fielded then. And I guess like first strike and drawing a card is just a bit too much. I think that this is the 05, so I'm blocking it. Oh wow, I just killed a Sage Archer here. Yeah, I definitely misplayed with the strike here, but I was just thinking it did something else, so I'm not. Well, it's a mistake, but it's still not. I think it's forgivable. I don't feel too bad about it. I think it's a very interesting decision from my opponent to lose his creature here. I mean, if that's a very good Delve card now. Okay, 3/3 flying. Oh, so far things are looking okay. I guess I should use the suspension field on this Glacial Stalker, and then I have the Sage Archer for the Scavenger and even the Defiant Strike to block with. There are 2 morphs, and I have a 3/4 captain that has to hold the fort. And if that doesn't work out, then we might be in trouble. I still think that the Glacial Stalker is more likely to be bigger than the 2 morphs. Alright, I do have to hold back the captain to block, of course. If my opponent bricks here and I get to eat the Sultai Scavenger with the Defiant Strike, I'm quite happy. If this is just a small creature, I'm also still reasonably happy. 5. Okay. So my opponent with the 3/4 flyer. I think that's still okay. I do get to kill this one with the Defiant Strike, and then I have a blocker for this starting next turn, which is better than taking too much damage here. Quite the interesting game, I think. Who knows how things would be had I played this other turn differently. Oh boy, Awaken the Bear. I was under the impression that my opponent would not have a good card in hand, because clearly the idea was to loot away with the Abomination. But now I'm facing 2 lethal flyers, so probably dead. Well, now 1 is not lethal anymore, so I can definitely draw out of it here. If I just draw the Reach Outlast creature, for example. No, that's not enough. Definitely a powerful late game by my opponent. Still not convinced that I need anything in particular to beat it, though. It's possible that I should play Rite of the Serpent. In both of these games, I had enough time to draw towards better mana, and my opponent is also playing some heavy hitters and not much else. So also these all these clunky tricks are a bit dangerous because my opponent is just equipped with quite powerful delve instants or just instants in general. It's possible that Rite of the Serpent is better than Become Immense. I like the Tusk Colossodon. I like to have that in my deck. Sage Archer was great. And otherwise the Outlast creatures should also be a pretty good addition. Don't think that I'm unfavored here. I'm gonna try to be on the play again and see how that goes. Oh, my opponent actually revealed a face-down creature as Monastery Flock. Well, it definitely wasn't the one that I thought was Monastery Flock, but there was a Monastery Flock at least. Alright, time for game 3. Let's go first and yeah, keep this hand. It's a pretty easy keep. Yeah, this is actually pretty awesome. Opponent down to 6 cards. Down to 5 cards. And I have an incredible curve here. Chief of the Scale into Abzan Guide morphed. Into Abzan Battle Priest. And then if I only draw lands for the whole game, I get 4/5 Abzan Guide. An Abzan Battle Priest that can grow. And I have Suspension Field for my opponent's largest creature. Alright, Combat Trick and 7-drop, not necessarily what I wanted to see. I wouldn't be super unhappy about a banner though. Clearly untapped lands are better. Oh, Monastery Flock. No land. So I could be very aggressive here and just Suspension Field, because otherwise I'm not using my turn at all. And that puts more pressure on my opponent, and once I have 5 mana, well, once I draw a single land, I'm actually doing great things. I think that's what I want to be doing. I'm very constricted on white mana anyway, and I don't think I'm getting a bad exchange here. Also, my opponent mulliganed, so it's not even clear if there is like a 4th land or something to block these creatures with. Well, there's the 4th land. And there's a morph. Yeah, now I can't really expose my Abzan Guide here. But that's a good draw. Watcher of the Roost is pretty great. This time I am going to cast it face down. Had my opponent attacked here, I would have been scared of an Abzan Guide on my opponent's side. Now I think it's probably just a Glacial Crasher or some kind of blocker. Let's reveal this 7-drop. I don't think that's a big problem. And it's possible that my opponent has the Archer here, which is a blowout, but anything but the Archer, like the Glacial Crasher or anything, I'm starting to deal 2 in the air, and I think I have to do that. I'm going to put my opponent on a larger ground creature, which I think is much more likely than the flying blocker. well, a blocker for flyers. And as was the case in Onslaught Limited, once you have 3 mana, you can pretty much cast spells every single turn. Oh, it is an Abzan Guide, but my opponent decided not to attack with it last turn. Interesting. That has to mean that there is a combo trick up my opponent's sleeve. But if Absent Guide attacks here, I'm just attacking back for a bunch. And if it's not, then why isn't this loading? If it's not, I'm actually not unhappy about just dealing 2 in the air. I should probably cycle this Defiant Strike at some point. Doesn't make a lot of sense now, but if I really need to draw. I really need to draw that 4th land. So I'm gonna Defiant Strike my opponent's Abzan Guide here. That way a removal spell isn't going to be a problem. Alright, not much going on here. This time I'm going to use the Defiant Strike on my own creature, and that's because my opponent cast the Ramparts this turn. So I don't think that my opponent has a removal spell in hand. It doesn't really increase the clock, but there is no reason to not deal this point of damage. I mean, there's some cards that could have punished me, but I think my opponent was under enough pressure that he would have used one of his removal spells earlier, and this turn pretty clearly drew the Ramparts, so alright. So now the flying beatdown is stopped for now. And still no lands for me. I'm not unhappy that I dealt quite a bit of damage, also with my aggressive use of the suspension field. But the fact that I could never draw my 4th land definitely hurt me. I mean, I do have a lot of clunky cards in my deck, I know that, but with the Bitter Revelation and the Battle Priest, I was feeling confident that I could find lands, and then once I have a growing Battle Priest, it gets a lot more difficult for my opponent. Now I might actually be losing because the Abomination might start attacking. And I actually have no good unmorphs. So the Abzan Guide is actually holding back my whole team. On the ground at least. We are also in a battle of 3 minutes against 4. Which might actually be relevant. Yeah, I've seen 17 cards out of my deck. From what looked like a perfect opener, the starting hand had these three lands: Chief of the Scale, the Abzan Guide, and the Abzan Battle Priest. To be fair, I have my opponent down to 5, so. And my opponent doesn't know what I have, so it's possible that my opponent is playing conservatively, which I think is one of the biggest mistakes people make. But I see it pretty much all the time. Here, I'm just going to Revelate. I think my best shot here is to just find the high impact cards. Oh, well, yeah. Clearly, there's where my lands are. And when I said high impact cards, I meant lands, because I have the high impact cards, I just need the lands to cast them. I want to just drop 2 Lamassus. And those are actually threatening lethal. But it's going to be difficult if my opponent ever decides to attack with his Abzan Guide. I probably have to spend next turn unmorphing my own Abzan Guide and forcing a trade. I think passing the turn with 5 mana up is actually pretty good because I have three different unmorphs available. My opponent is actually not going to be able to play around all of them. This looks very scary. It could just be a treasure cruise, which I wouldn't be unhappy to see. Also, the way my opponent is playing it, he's definitely getting in trouble with the time. Okay, shambling attendance. Another reason to pass the turn here with 5 mana up. Usually it's me who gets into trouble with the time when I commentate on a new format, on a fresh format. It looks like my opponent isn't the most experienced either. And it is kind of tricky with lands and banners that create so much mana, and then you have Delve. You really have to know where to click, and yeah, it's also just a complicated format, of course. I didn't play the Blossoming Sands here because I really wanted to have the unmorph potential. Okay. So this is not a land, clearly. It is a banner though. Yeah, so I can just play a banner here. And that accelerates me into the Lamassus. Don't know if it's all that important still, but it's not going to be bad. I could have played the Tusk Colossodon instead. That was my other line, my alternative line. I actually don't know how aggressive my opponent is going to be here, because I honestly think that my opponent had not only the option to attack earlier, but should have attacked earlier. With cards like Abzan Guide, the Abomination, like the lifelink, even if it's just a single hit, would have put me under so much more pressure than what my opponent has now. Wow. Dead drop. That's pretty huge. Chief of the Scale, and I guess the 2/1 because it doesn't do anything on this board. Let's get the flyer in here. And the good thing is that I have another one. I'm also fully aware that my opponent now is going to be in a lot of trouble, time-wise. And that actually causes the concession here. So my plan would have been to block this Abomination with the Lamassu. My opponent can't aggressively tap, except if attacking with Abzan Guide, which I think is the line here. You tap down my flyer, attack with everything, but that only works if you have something else to play, maybe sacrifice the banner. But looking at the time, it just wasn't enough time. Also, this was actually quite an interesting game on my side as well. If time hadn't been an issue, if I can actually win this without drawing the 4th land for so long, I'm not sure, but I'm happy that it worked out. So we'll get at least a round 2, maybe even a finals. See you then.
Curious about the price of a Magic Online card? Try our searchable price guide on the right sidebar of any mtgoacademy.com page.
Alright, time for round 2. Let me close this and reopen so we have a new game here. I'm gonna stick to playing first. I think that was a good thing. And I like this hand. Perfect mana is always good to start with. Of course, having a 7-drop, not the greatest, but still. I think my deck can't really draw too many lands, so... Alright, we have a bit of lag here. I think I might just have to restart. Alright, looks like round 1 was a bit too epic for Magic Online. But now things seem to be working again. Absent Guide. It's not a bad start. Always an interesting decision which of these morphs to play first. I guess, I mean, I don't have to morph the Watcher, but I wouldn't be too unhappy to show a 7-drop. Rattleclaw Mystic is quite scary. This just the perfect mana fixer in this format. So I think playing the Watcher as a face down creature is my best line here. I want any kind of removal spell to hit the Watcher instead of the Abzan Guide. But if the Watcher lives, I'm also not unhappy about it. That way I can play the Abzan Guide with the perfect curve, basically. Oh, interesting. Rattleclaw Mystic is attacking. So does that mean there's a combat trick protecting it, or does it mean that my opponent doesn't really need the Mystic? I think I have to take the damage here. I have a lot of defensive cards, and I don't want to trade my few evasive creatures for my opponent's mana creatures. Seiju Archer. It's not bad either. So I'm gonna reveal the Lamassu here. I don't want to show the Abzan Guide because that's going to be my next play. And then I'm hoping that I can unmorph the Abzan Guide next turn. If not, I can still play Seiju Archer. Hardcast. I'm not sure if it was worth it to gain the 2 life, but giving away the information. Okay, now the Mystic is not attacking anymore, so there might actually be a 5/5 being turned up here. But that's not bad because I get to crack back and gain 4 life. So that's actually favoring me. Yep, 5/5 trample. I mean, it's not really great to have a 4/4 life thing against a 5/5 trample, but at least this exchange of mana and life is good for me and will force this on the defensive most likely. This was the very first blocking decision was because of this kind of turn where I know that I have all the tools to turn this into a race that's favoring me, and I didn't draw my Outlast creatures or anything like that. Morph. So yeah, okay. I was expecting this not to attack. If it is attacking, it could be that this is an 0/5, but still there's actually not a lot of reason to deal 5 when your opponent is hitting back with a lifelinker. But we'll find out. You can't play too scared in a morph format anyway, and then there's still all these kind of combo tricks. I'm especially in my first recorded draft, I'm not going to try to play around everything, but instead try to get a feel for how the format works and what doesn't. So this is actually an interesting spot here. If my opponent just takes it, I think that the attack with the 5-5 was just not a good decision at all. Yeah, I don't understand this. Sorry about that, but that just doesn't make much sense to me. I could play the archer, but it won't block the rider anyway. And getting the Tuskart Captain into play is good if I don't draw a land, because then I will have the Outlast and the Unmorph available. So I think it's better to morph this and to hardcast the Captain instead of just playing a single creature. If I draw a land, my opponent also knows that the Lamassu is coming. So I'm actually not sure what my opponent's plan is there. Oh, Jeering Instigator. Nice. We opened that, I think, in pack 3 or something like that. It's a good turn for my opponent, but it's nothing to be too excited about. I'm still winning the damage race by a lot, by a wide margin, and I have the flyer that my opponent hasn't shown anything against. Okay, so now it would be good if I knew the tricks in this format. Interesting. I'm not sure if I want to expose this morph to a trade, but blocking the Mystic with Tuskart Captain seems like a very solid line. That still gives me a potentially lethal backswing. Now, what could happen here is my opponent plays the bear punching card, turns this into a 4/3, and then it fights with something else, but then it still dies to the block. So I think that I just block one of these without a lot of risk. My opponent is going up to 11, so I need more to attack for lethal anyway. Okay, interesting. Crippling Chill. That's a nice one. It's also good to know. Definitely an important information here. My opponent is also not attacking for lethal with both of his creatures, if I allow that to happen. So that makes me want to just play the Lamassu to have a blocker. And then maybe win with the Defiant Strike. And that means that I can be quite aggressive here. And that makes it so much more likely that I win next turn with the help of Defiant Strike. I am running into certain combat tricks here. But I think a single one isn't going to do it. Maybe the +6/+6, I'm not sure. +6/+6 is 11 and I take 7. I take 9 exactly. Okay, so I left myself dead to become immense. But I'm not dead to Crippling Chill, I'm not dead to Bounce, I'm not dead to Removal Spell, and so on. I am also dead to the Bear Punching card. Yeah, so maybe that attack was a bit too ambitious. Not sure. I won, so my opponent didn't have what he needed, clearly. Defiant Strike is not as good as I thought when I built this deck, but I haven't really been unhappy to draw them. I was often you face these kind of 5 toughness creatures with your Abzan guides, and in the worst case you can cycle them. I kind of like the Mastodon because of the 5/5 morph that my opponent has shown. That makes the Tusk Colossodon a pretty bad card to play, I think. Flyers seem very good against my opponent, and maybe Rite of the Serpent would be worthwhile as well. And we've pretty much seen that my deck can support at least one of the double black cards, I think. The only question is what to take out. I like the Become Immense in this matchup. It's possible that I should just take out a black card for the mana purposes, or one of the Defiant Strikes, because they clearly aren't amazing. Yeah, let's take out one of the cantrips here. I'm also on the draw, so I'm less likely to need to cycle cards for mana. My opponents are also choosing to play first, so I guess that seems to be the norm. I don't think that this is a format where you could not decide to draw if my deck was more Abzan-y with a little bit more Outlast maybe, and a late game that was pretty much guaranteed to work out. I could see that very good decks that want to be on the draw. I do need to draw that third land here. Oh wow, it's a very aggressive Instigator. And this might be the problem that I talked about earlier. If you have the Abzan banner in your deck, you might not draw the third land to actually get it into play. I also think that I made a mistake by playing the forest. I should have Defiant Strike during my turn, because I could have drawn into a tapped land that way, and then I would have had my turn to play it. If this is a tapped land now, then my line of play would have been punished. But it's not, so everything is fine. Do I play Abzan banner here? I think I do. My opponent actually missed his land drop, and I don't want to trade a morph for the Instigator. Also, I'm basically paying more mana if I start morphing creatures. If I instead just play the Archer face up, and then follow up with face up Abzan guides, my opponent is in a big problem, has a big problem. Alright, my draw is developing very nicely here. And the way things are looking, I can expose Abzan Guide to combat and still have Throttle mana up, which could lead to an absolute blowout. Or if my opponent doesn't do anything, I play another Abzan Guide, which is also just tremendous. And clearly Abzan Guide is unraceable, so... even if the morph is the 5/5 trample again, there isn't much my opponent can do here. You can't attack with both creatures. Even attacking with the 5/5 would be a mistake. You have to hold it back and flip it, and then I punish that with Throttle, and yeah, it's just not pretty. Another point of life for my opponent would probably have preferred an untapped land there. If my opponent attacks here, it's actually quite interesting what I do. Because I have that other Abzan guide, but I still think it's correct not to block. Like I said, there's no reason to expose my creature if I have the throttle. Yeah, I'm just going to take it. Once the life gain triggers, I should be in good shape. This could be the +3/+3 trick. And if it is, I'm letting damage resolve. Oh wow. That's very interesting. I have to check on the rare that I passed what exactly it does. Alright, I was worried there for a second because I passed a Mind Swipe in the draft and that counters a spell unless the controller pays X, and I wasn't sure if it dealt damage to players or also to creatures. And if it had also dealt damage to creatures, then hardcasting Abzan Guide here is horrible because my opponent Mind Swipes the Abzan Guide and kills my other Abzan Guide. Now I think I'm probably just losing this Abzan Guide to some kind of trick, and I'm fine with that. My opponent's block really only makes sense with an end of turn burn spell. And there's the Winter Flame. Yeah, this is basically the other instant, the other blue-red instant that I passed. I think it was in my very first pack. So I'm actually playing against the opponent that's set to probably to my immediate left. Would also fit with the colors. And if this morph is attacking, I'm putting it on. I'm just going to think it's the 5/5, and I'm not going to block again. I also think that if it's the 5/5, that it's not correct to attack, but that's another topic. Alright, Avalanche Tusker. So it forces creatures to block. I might just want to throttle that, I think. Another banner, of course, working out exactly. Not working out, but yeah, I mean, throttling this seems definitely worth it. I get to connect for 6 points of damage, gaining 4 again. And my hand is still pretty stacked. On the other hand, my opponent also has 3 more cards, and they could be spells. Certainly don't know. And now that I have used up the throttle, if the morph stays back, I kind of have to respect the fact that it could kill Abzan Guide. And then I probably want to follow up with the Outlast creatures and grow them. Yeah, it is actually the 5/5. I still don't understand the aggressiveness by my opponent. I mean, if my opponent untaps this or has some other trick, I can totally understand this, but if not, then you're basically dealing me 1 point of damage and taking 4, which is a horrible trade, and definitely not one to win the game with. Now, because I have the Lamassu already, I want to get the second banner into play. It's actually possible that I should just cast this face down. And the reason is that my opponent has to realize at some point that he can't attack on the ground anymore. And then the morph goes to the air and brings my opponent to single digit life totals. Master the Way. Okay, yeah, that's actually very good for my opponent. So he gets his 4th card into his hand and kills the Abzan Guide that way. I'm still winning the race, but at least now the life link is not an issue anymore for my opponent. Now I could certainly see my opponent attacking. My line of play is still going to be the Lamassu. Oh, and a Delph creature. Maybe the 4/4 Apes? No. Put target non-land opponent on top of its owner's library. Well, I will still flip it. I think that's not a very good set adrift. But what can you do? It's a sorcery, so my opponent was happy to play it. My archer is very bad at blocking this guy, except maybe together with the battle priest. It's possible that I should just play the battle priest, hold back the archer. I still get to play the Watcher of the Roost, so that way I'm playing a bit more conservatively. And if my opponent doesn't attack, then I start growing my battle priest. I think I like that better. What I could have done here was to flip Watcher of the Roost first, but I've already shown the Lamassu to my opponent, because at that point I still thought that I was definitely just slamming the Lamassu and keeping the race alive. I think the double block is actually better. If I lose a creature to my opponent's removal spell here, I think the Lamassu in conjunction with the Avon, is it an Avon? No, together with the Bird Soldier, are still very likely to win me the race and the game. Okay, yeah, I mean that's a good Winter Flame, I guess. Don't understand why you would play that before I block. This Blossoming Sands is actually quite nice, because 11 life means I can take a full additional hit from the Snowhorn Rider, which makes going on the offense here even more easy. So if you don't know yet, this has been a function for a very long time. If you hold the M key on your keyboard, those lands and mana artifacts that tap for multiple colors of mana will tap for, I think, the first one that appears on the card. But for example, for a card like Venerable Lamassu, once I've tapped a Plains or the Blossoming Sands for white, I can just hold M and click on the others very quickly. Not irrelevant if you want to save some time or not have to deal with the laggy client, maybe. Oh yeah, I also passed that one. So taps my creatures and they don't untap. That's very powerful in this spot. Might actually come down to me having gained that extra point of life. But I'm pretty much dead to any kind of trick. So if my opponent still has something else, then things might be problematic. Wow. That's huge. Quite literally. I was debating what to do, like sacrificing Abzan Banner, see what I draw, and then probably play the captain with the plan of blocking the Morph, which is not great. And drawing a 5/4 flyer is of course pretty amazing. There's still some cards that I lose to, but this is pretty perfect. I'm definitely blocking here. There's too many cards that I lose to otherwise. Even if it's possible that I have the win in the air. This is also a case of where I think that the long game is favoring me anyway. And this other morph can't be something tremendous. Otherwise, it would have also been part of combat, I think. Oh, I guess I'm threatening 9 points of damage, so my opponent probably didn't have the luxury. I'm tapping out of black, which is kind of awkward here, but it's still better to draw deeper into my deck. And I think it's a pretty easy attack with only the flyers. There's too high of a chance that the archer gets eaten by whatever my opponent has. No blockers is good. 2 life is also good. Okay, my opponent actually had 4 rugged highlands. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, great games. The Winter Flame dealt with the Abzan guy, but I got the 2-for-1 out of the deal. Master the Way kind of got it back, but ultimately the fact that I have these huge 7 drops in my deck, and I kind of had the better start, yeah, put me ahead in the race. I also think that my opponent lost out on the damage raise with his decisions to raise the Abzan guide, which didn't really make sense. Still doesn't make sense to me. Well, time for the finals.